was in my second year of high school. Every year, our school was required to perform at least 2 lockdown drills, but our principal at the time would always have us do more like 3 or 4, so I was pretty used to it. All of the teachers would always warn us ahead of time to save any panic. That morning, as I walked into my first period class, I was informed by my history teacher that the school would be having a lockdown drill that day. I actually kind of liked them, because it meant we'd have less work to do considering the 20 or 25 minutes they always take. 30 minutes into class and a short buzzer went off, followed by our principal's voice on the intercom. Like every other drill, he explained how the school was going into lockdown, but that it was just a practice drill. He explained that should there ever be a real lockdown, the buzzer would sound for longer, and there would be no intercom announcement. Our teacher instructed all of us to shut the curtains and go into the corner of the classroom that was not visible from the outside door. He then shut off the lights and locked the door. For the next few minutes, we sat in silence. Eventually, we heard footsteps outside. It was the principal trying every classroom door to make sure they were locked and that the classes were responding to the lockdown correctly. Before I knew it, the drill was over. The day progressed and I was now sitting in my physics class, which was right after lunch. At some point, I ducked out of the class to use the bathroom. Now, our school building had a basement. Down there they had a bathroom that was much more private and a lot less busy, so I would always try to use that one. There were a couple classrooms down there, so it didn't look weird for me to go down there. I was sitting in one of the back stalls. I was the only one in there, which was usually the case. All of a sudden, I heard the lockdown buzzer start going off from outside in the hall. It sounded for about a full minute before it abruptly stopped. I waited for the principal's voice to come over the speakers, but it never did, which, like I mentioned earlier, was supposed to signify a real lockdown. At first, I didn't really think it was a real lockdown though. It happened too close to the practice lockdown earlier that morning. I thought it was just a second part to the drill. But as I sat there for a few more minutes, I started to realize that if that were the case, that probably would have been explained over the intercom. I started to panic, now thinking this was real. I wasn't safe in the bathroom, the door had no lock, so I ran outside to try and find a classroom. There wasn't much for options in that basement. It was also hard to see now that they turned the hall lights off. But I did eventually find a classroom door. I tried the handle. It was locked. I looked in through the glass part of the door. In one of the corners, I could barely make out a kid hiding. There was a class inside. I banged on the door, explaining that I was a student and trying to hide. I got no response. I was both terrified and frustrated at the same time. I realized protocol was to never let anyone inside no matter what. I was on my own. I thought about going back to the bathroom, but found an empty computer lab first and settled on that. I got under one of the back desks, and for the second time that day sat in silence, only this time for a real lockdown. 10 minutes went by. Nothing. Not even an update over the intercom. Then, the heart-dropping sound of running footsteps from outside coming down the basement stairs. I could hear the person's heavy breathing. It kept getting closer. It now sounded like it was just outside the room. I started adjusting my body position to try and duck down more to get further out of view, when a light turned on. It was the light to the computer on the desk above me waking up. I must have accidentally pulled the mouse cord. It wasn't that bright, but it was enough for me to make out a silhouette in the doorway to the room. I genuinely feared for my life in that moment. The person was just standing there. I prayed they wouldn't enter the room, and after what felt like an eternity, they turned and continued running down the hallway. A few minutes later, and the lockdown was over. The school tried to keep the incident silent, but it eventually got out. Apparently, a kid in my grade that I actually slightly knew stole his dad's gun and got into school through a back door he left propped open earlier in the day. Police showed up to the school and detained him before any bullets were shot. They later searched his backpack and found a paper with a list of names on it, which they believe was who he meant to kill that day. Pictures of the list itself leaked. My name was number 4 on that list. I never heard if the kid just got scared and decided not to do anything, or if he just genuinely didn't find anybody after entering the building. Either way, I believe the person that I saw while hiding in the computer lab was him, and that I could have lost my life in that moment. Back in October of 2016, for whatever reason, these killer clown sightings kept getting reported around America. Real or fake, videos of them would almost always get posted somewhere online. For that whole month, it was all over the news. I remember in our town specifically, it kinda got out of hand. People in the area were committing real crimes wearing clown masks, or sometimes full-body clown outfits. It was honestly terrifying. Anyway, back when this was happening, I was in high school. Throughout that whole month, many of the staff and student school emails received threats. They were always from a different random email address, so there was no real way of blocking them. It was always something like killerclown@cvx.zy or something random. It usually had something to the effect of killer clown followed by some random characters. It got so bad that the school had to send out a mass email to all students and parents saying they were aware of the threats and were taking them seriously. I remember some days the teachers were instructed to teach with their classroom doors locked. We weren't even allowed to leave to go to the bathroom. Needless to say, a lot of us were on edge. I have no shame in saying it was really scary. I saw some of the things the emails were saying. A lot of it was really graphic and truly disturbing. Of course, at the time, none of us knew if anyone was really planning to act on these threats, or if it was just someone somewhere behind a computer screen playing a sick joke. But honestly, it felt like only a matter of time before something would go down. And finally, one day something would. I was in my trigonometry class when the school's lockdown alarm went off. The principal's voice then came over the loudspeaker. His voice was shaky. Now, our principal was a pretty intimidating dude, so hearing fear in his voice only furthered my own fear. I knew this lockdown had to be related to the threats. In that classroom, there wasn't really a good corner for all of us to hide in. You could see a good portion of the room from outside the door. So our teacher ordered us to barricade the door with all the desks and chairs in the room. We then sat as far away from the door as we could, although even this provided a clear view of the glass window on the door. I watched as all the lights abruptly turned off in the hallway, shortly followed by the lights in the classroom. The familiar hum of the heating system faded. The school had cut the power. It was eerie. The whole building was quiet, and there wasn't the usual whispering or joking around from other students like there was during practice drills for this kind of thing. Even our teacher had a look of fear on his face, putting me more on edge. We sat there for multiple minutes. We then heard a metal banging sound, like someone was hitting the lockers down the hall. A voice started yelling. One of the girls sitting next to me quietly began crying. The noises continued off and on for the next few minutes. As time passed, the noises kept getting louder, as whoever was making them seemingly kept getting closer. At this point, my classmates and I were staring at each other, all of us gauging each other's reactions. Then, the sound of the classroom's door handle rattling. I looked up. Through the glass on the door, I saw a clown mask looking in. The person stood there for a while, not doing anything. Then they abruptly ducked down out of view, and the sound of the door handle rattling continued. They were trying to pick the lock. We all sat there listening to this happen, when the lock disengaged. Immediately, the full body force of this person smashed into the door. The desks barricading the door slightly shifted back. This happened a few more times, but not much progress was made. They eventually gave up, and we could hear their footsteps running away down the hall. When police arrived, they cleared the building and escorted all of us out. No one was ever found responsible for the lockdown. It's believed at least 3 people dressed in clown costumes entered the back entrance of the school that day, intent on making true to the threats sent over email. At the time, the school did have some cameras, but during the lockdown they cut the power, so they never caught anything. School was canceled for the next few days. When we came back, the school had installed a new auto-locking feature on the doors and windows. This happened in 2013. I had graduated college the year prior with a degree in education. I wanted to be a teacher and was able to land a job at a nearby high school. The first few weeks, I was shadowing another teacher, as they called it. It was meant to help me prepare to teach my own class, but it really just felt like a glorified TA position. I would sit in the class with the other students and help the teacher when needed. It was a chemistry class, and on one of the lab days, we required those flasks used for chemical reactions, measuring solutions, and stuff like that. All of that type of stuff was kept in a supply closet on the other side of the building. I made my way out of the class and started heading over there. After 2 minutes, I was there and began looking for the flasks. All of a sudden, my phone went off. It was an automatic text message from the school. Being a part of the staff, we were required to sign up to receive these automated messages. The text explained how the school was going into lockdown and that it was not a drill. By the time I would have made it back to my class, the door would have likely already been locked, so I opted to hide in the closet by myself. I turned off the light and closed the door. There wasn't much room to sit down. I had to just stand there in the dark. After a few seconds, the lockdown alarm sounded from the speakers throughout the building. The usual ambience from inside nearby classrooms immediately died down. It was now completely quiet. Breaking the silence was the sound of my phone going off again. It was an update. It read, "Please remain in lockdown. A suspected armed intruder has entered the building. Police have been notified." I could feel my heart picking up speed. I didn't feel safe where I was. Suddenly, I heard running footsteps in the hall. They ran right up to the closet door and stopped. The doorknob turned and the door opened. It all happened before I even had time to react. Standing outside was an older man in maybe his 50s. He was wearing a regular t-shirt with jeans. I'd never seen the man before. He asked if he could hide in here with me, and feeling bad for the guy, I said yes. There wasn't much room at all, but we both still fit. The man explained how he had been teaching a class down the hall when he heard the lockdown alarm. In my mind, this raised a red flag. Why then was he here instead of with his class? I asked him this. He didn't immediately respond. Interrupting the silence was again the sound of my phone. It was another update from the school. The text said to not open our classroom doors for any reason, and that the suspect was believed to be an older man with a beard. I frantically reread the words on my screen. I didn't get the best look at this guy, but from what I did see, he fit that description. I could now distinctly hear my heart beating out of my chest. I made a split-second decision. I opened up the closet door and ran. I went straight to the nearest exit and out to my car in the parking lot. When I got there, I looked back behind me. I didn't see anything. I don't think the man followed me, or at least he didn't follow me outside. From there, I got in my car and left. I'd say around 25 minutes later, I received a final update text explaining that the police had cleared the building and the lockdown was over. I later learned the man had gotten inside by convincing the front desk that he was there to pick up his kid, but that a lockdown was called when they saw a gun holster around his waist as he was walking down the hall. Several teachers reported their classroom doors being forcefully struck during the lockdown from someone trying to open them. The man was gone when police arrived, and they were never able to identify him. He was caught on the school's security cameras, but they never showed a full view of his face. However, they did show that he was indeed armed. I saw the videos myself, and I'm almost sure it was the same man hiding with me, but it was also dark in that closet, so I can't be certain.